Hold up.
Today, we honor Black History Month by acknowledging the pain, struggle, and resistance that have marked our journey. From slavery to systematic inequality, we face brutal realities, yet we have emerged stronger, more resilient, and determined to fight for freedom. As we celebrate our strength and progress, I want to share with you a story of an incredible woman who has changed the face of healthcare forever. My name is Vanessa, and I'll be teaching you all about Bessie Blount Griffin. Bessie was born in Hickory, Virginia on November 24th, 1914, to George Woodrow and Mary Elizabeth Griffin, a couple who had next to nothing. Though it had been roughly half a century since slavery was outlawed in America, racism was still alive and well, and Bessie's options as a Black woman in the small town of Hickory were very limited. Just like her mother, Bessie attended elementary school at a one-room schoolhouse called Diggs Chapel, a church built by Black members of the local community after the Civil War. It was meant to educate former slaves, their children, and Native Americans. Bessie and her classmates didn't have textbooks, though they would eventually receive hand-me-downs from the white schools in the area. So they learned by quoting verses from the Bible. Discipline was harsh, and the rod was not spared. She grew up developing a strong interest in science and inventing from an early age. Bessie pursued her passion for physical therapy, graduating from Panzer College of Physical Education and Hygiene in East Orange, New Jersey, in 1938. After completing her education, she began working as a physical therapist, dedicating herself to helping patients recover from injuries and illnesses. This early foundation in physical therapy would eventually lead to her groundbreaking innovation in assistive technology. Now we're going to talk about some social injustices that happened during Bessie Blount's time. First, we'll be talking about redlining. To begin, what is redlining? Redlining is the practice of denying people access to credit because of where they live, their skin color, or even if they personally qualify for loans. For all three maps are being shown, green means very good and meant for only white people or where white people should live. Blue means okay, white people should still live there, but it's not as good as the green. Yellow means it's not the best, more so for African American and more Mexican or Native American. And red means really, really bad. And basically all black people live there. It's like the south of Chicago. Redline has affected Bessie growing up as she had to move due to not having fair education. She also may have faced housing difficulties or even securing a mortgage due to these practices that deny services to African American, especially women in certain neighborhoods. Next, we'll be talking about Jim Crow laws. What are Jim Crow laws? Jim Crow laws are a collection of state and local statuses that legalize racial segregation, basically separating whites and blacks with, the law behind it. Since we're talking about the Jim Crow era, we need to talk about the most important marches of that time. The Children's Crusade, or the Children's March, was a march by over 1,000 schoolchildren in Birmingham, Alabama, on May 2nd through May 10th of 1963. Initiated and organized by Reverend James Bevel, and the purpose of the march was to walk downtown to talk to the mayor about the segregation in their city. Many children left their schools and were arrested, set free, and then arrested again the next day. The marchers were stopped by the head of police, Bull Connor, who brought fire hoses to ward off the children and set police dogs after the children.
When we got to the park, police was lined up.
They were marching, got ready. Oh, good Lord, I scared to death. And then the officers gave the order to open up.
They aimed for your head to knock you down. And that water had pressure behind it. It hurt.
During the meeting the day before, they had told us the policeman might hit you, the policeman might have dogs, they might spit on you, they might kick you. But I remember thinking that no one said anything about water hoses.
You could see that the first blast of water dispersed the crowds. But when the water subsided, there were 10 kids still standing, and they were singing one word over and over.
The crowd surged back behind them. The firemen were suddenly faced with 200, then 500 protesters.
Bull Connor standing there with his hands on his hips. Shoot the water on those niggers.
The water was so powerful that 4 men couldn't hold it steady.
We could hear the firemen yelling, "Knock the niggers down."
The hose rolled me right down the street, like a sheet of paper.
And look, it would sting so bad.
Suddenly you could see against the sky these bricks and stones.
They were calling us SOBs and bastards, and it started with the rocks and the bottles.
They were arresting them as fast as they could.
Bull came through with that damn tank.
And black folk were throwing and hitting that tank with balls and rocks.
Bull Connor would tell them, "Bring the dogs out."
Most of the dogs were on leash, but if you reach out, the dog's going to bite you.
There was this vicious big old dog that turned loose on the smaller child, and the dog lunged at his throat, and it hit him and bit him.
Police had named this black dog Nigger. It was a black German Shepherd.
They had nigga trained. The nigga would bite you. The nigga would bite anybody, black or white, didn't make no difference.
Firemen, journalists, and teenagers all went to the hospital.
I saw a fireman get smashed in the
Lastly, we have anti-miscegenation laws or miscegenation laws, which are laws that are enforced for racial segregation at the level of marriage and intimate relationship by criminalizing interracial marriages, sometimes also criminalizing sex between members of different races. An example for this law would be the Lovings versus Virginia, as they were an interracial couple that were imprisoned for getting married together. Next, we're going to be talking about what Bessie Blount created. Bessie Blount Griffin created the feeding device, also known as a feeding tube, in the 1950s to help people with disabilities, particularly those with paralysis or limited mobility, to eat independently. Bessie's innovative feeding device enabled individuals with limited mobility to eat without assistance, promoting dignity, independence, and self-sufficiency. Her invention consisted of a tube that delivered the food to the patient's mouth, allowing them to eat at their own pace. Not only was she known for her invention, Bessie was also known for being the first female African American forensic scientist. Now we'll be talking about how her invention has affected us in society now. Bessie's invention of the feeding tube has impacted society by enabling individuals with disabilities to eat independently and enhancing their quality of life. By promoting dignity and nutrition, her invention has reduced healthcare costs, facilitating greater participation in daily activities, and inspired further innovations in assistive technology. According to the CDC, around 500,000 people use feeding tubes today. Data also shows that 27.7% of infants use feeding tubes for either cerebral palsy or Down syndrome, while 6.9% of children use feeding tubes for either cerebral palsy or autism. 0.6% of adults use feeding tubes for either cerebral palsy or Parkinson's disease, while 1.7% of older adults either use it for dementia or stroke. Bessie's life came to a full circle on December 30th, 2009, when she passed away at the age of 95. Her legacy, however, continues to inspire generations. As a pioneer, physical therapist, inventor, and advocate for people with disabilities, Bessie left an indelible mark on the world. Her groundbreaking inventions, including the feeding tube, improved the lives of countless individuals, promoting independence, dignity, and inclusivity. Today, Bessie's trailblazing spirit, compassion, and innovative genius continues to empower people around the world, ensuring that her impact will be left and felt for generations to come.
What you wanna do? Huh? Yeah. Tell that what you